get going here this morning. As I mentioned, today we're talking about security and ServiceNow, tools that are in the platform that you may not know that you have. And today we're going to be focusing on tools that have to do with data protection. Just like I do in every webinar, I have to bring up the safe harbor slide. If my mouse would like to advance here, that would be really nice. If there's any statements here made about features or capabilities in the product that would be in a future release, these are not promises that these will actually occur in the time frame mentioned or at all. So just please keep that in mind. And also this event is being recorded. So particularly around this topic, if there's something that you don't want to be recorded and available to the public, please don't bring that up. Okay, so our agenda today, obviously we'll go through some introductions so you get to know our panelists a little bit better. We'll do a quick review of what we talked about back in October at our first session, and then we're going to dive into our topics around data protection, and then we'll have some opportunity for some Q&A.
All right. Britta, do you want to do any intros, or should we just jump right in?
Let's just do quick intros. I don't know if everybody on the call knows all of us. I'm a 15-year ServiceNow veteran, having worked in the field in expert services, helping deliver our platform into over 150 customer deployments, and have worked in our best practices, leading practices team, and now am in a team where I work 100% on the community. And Jarod, you want to go next?
Yeah, I've been at ServiceNow about 2 years. I've been on the ServiceNow platform for over 10 years. In that time, I've done a lot of integrations and internal system type of work, less on the UI UX side of things. And so that's really what got me onto the security products, making sure that everything's working behind the scenes and is working fast.
And Nick?
Hey everyone, Nick Sessa. I'm a ServiceNow architect specializing in the security space. I've worked across both partners and customers, mostly in highly regulated areas like healthcare and other critical infrastructure.
Nice.
So our goal from this webinar is to increase your awareness of the platform tools that are native to the platform and increase your confidence and comfort in using these tools. And so without any further ado, I will turn it over to you, Jarod and Nick.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, like Britta mentioned, this is part 2 of hopefully many more parts to come. So please fill out that survey at the end. Let us know what you like. Let us know what we should focus on in the future. What we're going to talk about today is data protection, but it's not all inclusive. There's a lot of layers that we can go into to review all the core free platform security tools, and then there's also another layer of premium paid security tools that we will not be discussing today. So we have a lot more to cover outside of the hour today. Whether we're talking about a free tool or a paid tool, all of the ServiceNow platform security follows the same vision, where we have a mission and vision to get the right data to the right people at the right time for the right purpose, and then also be able to prove it and review it after the fact. So yeah, let's jump right in. I always talk about the platform security vision, and then the shared responsibility model comes next in every talk that I give. I think it's important to show how ServiceNow we handle our side of the software as a service, data protection, instance security, but also there are some things that are in the hands of the customers. And so I like to call that out and make sure that that everyone knows that this is the model that we are operating under. And some of the tools we talk about today are things that ServiceNow has built to make sure that the customer level can accurately and properly have a properly secured instance, and minimize any sort of mistakes when we're doing custom things out there in the world. Real quick, what we talked about back in October in part 1 was some things that can be used to secure your instance and not necessarily the data inside of it. So just as a review, we talked about protected tables, some of the specific audit tables to track what people are doing, controlling the login behavior with adaptive authentication, protecting our API endpoints with the API access controls, and then also if we need to give extra access out, we can do that with time-limited roles. So check that out. That is out there on YouTube, the original October session. So yeah, let's jump in and talk about data protection. Next slide, we have a model of defense in depth, and Nick, I think, has some kickoff thoughts for us here.
Yeah. So if you're on this call and you're a security practitioner, or if you've studied for a security certification, you've probably heard of defense in depth. If not, let me explain it. So if you're looking at the diagram, you think of all of your data, your important things, your treasure is in that center tower, and that's really what you are trying to protect. If you had very valuable things like data, you probably wouldn't have just one locked door or one gate protecting it. So when you're designing security architecture, you want multiple gates in place, because inevitably one could get breached. And when you have multiple gates in place, you're much less likely for somebody to get to your valuables. So if you're looking at this diagram, I don't think I could point around, but like I said, the center tower, you can think of your data. Maybe that first wall around it is a username and password for local authentication, but then you add additional layers, like the layer beyond it maybe is MFA. The layer beyond that is if someone gets past those two, you have ACLs in place to filter off. Then you have column level encryption with module access policies. So when you're designing, you should think you want to put as many layers as possible in case, and just assume some will inevitably get breached.
Right, yeah. If there is an accident in your ACL, the module access policy or the security data filters or some other layer will pick up the slack. So yeah, I think that's a great model for all security conversations, physical security, and also data security.
And it's great to have a visual like that. I just got back from Crete, but they have a lot of Venetian fortresses, and they built them with these walls so that they, with the way they were sloped and the way they had the bastions, to try to keep people out. So I think this is a great representation of that.
If one of them fails, we are still good.
Swinging.
It's not a breach even if there's one little accident somewhere.
Yeah, before we move on, we're going to have a quick poll here. So we wanted to ask folks if you have what your confidence level is if somebody asked you to do a proactive security review, and then if you are doing proactive security reviews, how often are you doing those? So we got a double-sided question here. So thanks you for getting out there and answering. It looks like Somewhat Confident is leading for the first question, and Annually is leading for the second, although we do have one never for the second question, which is probably why that person is here today, and we're glad you're here for that. So I'll give it another couple moments here if anybody else wants to get out here and answer. But it looks like the majority of folks here are kind of around the somewhat confident level with running these practice security reviews. So I'm hoping that what Jarod and Nick have for you today will be really helpful. And it looks like the majority of folks who are running proactive security reviews are doing it on an annual basis. So I'm going to go ahead and shut down the poll here. Thank you all for responding. That's super helpful. And we will move on to the next slide.
Yeah, MFA. So if you follow security news and you follow breaches, you may have seen like a lot of SaaS platforms are having breaches where local username and passwords are basically just stuffed from breaches that people find online, and they'll take the credentials and they'll just try them against all these SaaS platforms, and there are breaches happening. So ServiceNow is going to take a proactive step, and coming in with the Yokohama release, they're going to enforce MFA for local authentication. What that means is it was always an option that you can turn on through like a system property and setup, but now it's going to be on as a mandatory step, and you'll have, instead of having to conditionally, like previously or currently, you have to conditionally set up a step up and say, hey, in these cases, I want to enforce MFA for local authentication, so a username and password on the sys user table. But now you have to think in an opposite paradigm. They're going to enforce it, which is great. And then if you have niche edge cases, which you shouldn't have many, that are local auth where you don't want MFA, you'll have to conditionally step down instead. If you follow me on LinkedIn, you'll see you saw a post that I posted that was about MFA on the platform and how it can be conditionally enforced and how a lack of MFA is a big deal. And there was a lot of buzz around people saying, oh, maybe this should be forced on a mandatory basis. So perfect timing coming in the next release.
Exactly. Yeah, very timely. And there have been emails from the product team and the security team going out to all the customers, letting them know that that will be part of the Yokohama upgrade. But just wanted to take a couple of moments here to remind everyone that some extra instance level security is on the way when you upgrade.
That'll be a big change for some folks.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, and we recommend learning how to work with it and not just going in and disabling it immediately. So yeah, it's not that complicated. Take a few moments to learn how to use it and educate your teams.
Yep. And some common questions that I've been asked just about that platform MFA in general is that does not affect your basic auth integration. So if you have an account using the table API with the username and password, it's not going to block that because that would break all of your basic auth integrations. And also SNC external. So if you're using something like third-party risk management, unless you explicitly set up MFA for those also won't require MFA. So that doesn't break any of your workflows. So plan to accommodate for that.
Right. And I skipped up to the next slide.
Yeah,
so.
No worries. All right, so encryption. All right, you probably know this is column level encryption. If you've never heard of it, that's fine too. We'll dive into it. So if you're thinking of the different types of encryption the platform offers for data at rest, there's the cloud encryption, which is, and Jarod, jump in if you want to add anything, which is encrypting your instance at the instance level. Oops, say again, sorry.
Oh, sorry, I was.
No, you're good.
No, I was just loading up, trying to find the link to the previous session so that we can.
Sorry.
Oh, okay. No, you're good. No worries.
In my audio.
Yeah, I'm working on that too because I can't do it on my computer. So yeah, go ahead.
You're fine. All right. Yeah. So there's cloud encryption where you're encrypting at the instance level, but then you have column level encryption, which is being renamed to field encryption. So column level encryption is going to, as the name implies, you're going to encrypt data at the field level or the column level. It's like when we looked at the diagram earlier with defense in depth, how you want to add multiple walls. This is another wall that you'll be adding because, like Jarod mentioned, if you set up your ACLs and maybe there's a hole in them because of maybe some bad code in the script, or maybe a role in there is in there that shouldn't be on the ACL, or you're not accommodating for an edge case, someone might be able to see that data, and having that extra layer will have you having the extra layer. You have to have module access policies, which are separate from ACLs and supersede them. So that's your extra layer that if someone bypasses an ACL, they're going to get blocked again. Even if they somehow can see that column because they bypassed an ACL, they're going to see ciphertext. So they're going to see gibberish that doesn't make sense. They're not going to see the plain text data that's stored in that field. Anything to add to that, Jarod?
Yeah, and because we are specifically encrypting it and not just using other layers of security, it will help a lot of regulatory checkboxes. Depending on what industry you're in and what geographic location you're in, your industry may have the requirement to encrypt sensitive data instead of just reasonably protect sensitive data. And so this is actually AES 128-bit or AES 256-bit encryption. So it will fulfill a lot of regulatory needs, whereas ACLs and data filters and before query business rules and all those other layers technically do not fulfill that. So,
and that picture is a great example. So if hypothetically you had an ACL, say in this case, that was blocking short description, this is just a good representation of what somebody would see if they say did a glide record query against it and didn't have access. They would see that's the that's what they would see. Meanwhile, on the back end, it's plain text and readable. Or when it's decrypted, it's plain text and readable.
Exactly. Yeah. So
oh yeah, go ahead. Go.
I was gonna mention that bottom bullet point before I moved on. So in some conversations that I've had, they say, okay, great, we love this. Let's encrypt everything. So because it is encrypted, it makes it harder to get access to it. Maybe you have a scheduled flow that runs as a regular user. That flow will not have access to that particular data. And so if you have conditions inside the flow to do things with that data, it can potentially impact your different automations and workflows. So we do recommend having a conversation on a case-by-case basis and not just blanket encrypting every string field on the task table, for example.
Like Jarod mentioned, a lot of the tools, or almost all the tools we're bringing up today, are free tools that come standard. So this is what you see here is the feature set and the different features you have for field encryption, what we'll call standard. And then there's also field encryption enterprise, which has expanded features. So I won't bore you with reading each line item, but if you're interested in what comes out of the box free, this is what you get. Like you mentioned, it's AES 128 and 256. You could do string text, date, attachment URLs, and it's pretty functional. And you have up to 5 modules and maps that you can add. And then on the next slide is the step up to the premium or an enterprise edition, which is part of the platform encryption bundle or vault. And this gives you additional features. And the biggest win that I see here with customers is bring your own key, because some specific regulatory bodies require you to own and manage your own encryption keys as a customer. So that's pretty huge for them. And Jarod, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, the second thing besides bring your own key is as a major difference between the standard and the enterprise edition is if you're using the free version, your scripting will need to use get display value and set display value on Glide Record when you're working with these encrypted columns. So if you have a big legacy app with, a few thousand of those Glide Record statements, that could be some friction to encrypting particular columns. But the Enterprise Edition does allow usage with the get value and set value, in addition to get display value and set display value. So anyway, it's a minor, it's kind of a little footnote line on this bullet list, but depending on what you are deploying it into, if it's a legacy app, that could be part of the it could add some friction to deploying the core version.
Oh, good.
No, go ahead. I'll let you finish.
Oh no, I was just going to add, if you're thinking of like when would you actually use this? Like one good example that I've used it for personally is like I built a custom healthcare app. Some of the fields had patient data, so in that case, like I didn't need to encrypt the entire row because most of the columns in that did not have PHI, but all the specific columns that had PHI, I added to module access policies and a cryptographic module to encrypt them, and that's that extra layer of defense. Whereas if someone got past the ACLs that I had in the scoped app, they would get hit with that extra layer. Or if the API wasn't set up properly, they have that extra layer there where it would just return the ciphertext and it wouldn't be usable for an attacker. And then beyond that, you can classify those columns as containing PHI, which we'll get into in the next few slides. But go ahead, Britta, sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that if you do have questions about the pricing on this or whether you already have this in your platform, to reach out to your account team. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah,
to you,
so
Jarod.
Yeah, Nick was mentioning tagging or classifying these different columns. And so one tool that comes up in almost every one of my customer conversations is the data classification plugin. This is a free core plugin that you can use to define your classification levels. There is some demo data that you can take out of the box when you install it, but what we do recommend is getting the classifications that apply to your organization. And as an administrator or developer, this is not just on you to decide what the data classification levels are. Please work with your management, work with your security team, your risk officer, a role like that. They will be able to give you a list of what things, what classifications exist and what type of handling there are for those. So for example, one of the customers I worked with through the portal let users update their mobile phone number and their home address on the sysuser table. And so as a result, that was now classified as PII. And they actually, that had impacts when we were doing integrations, when we were syncing that data outside of ServiceNow. We could not sync that data outbound. And then also when we were cloning down, we wanted to minimize that data in the subprods as well. So what I'm showing on the screen is just a random example of data classifications. And Britt, if you click, we'll show a picture of the dashboard. So when you install this, when you get it configured, there is a dashboard that will tell you how many rows, how many columns are currently in scope and what classifications are. So that's nice and pretty, but the real value of this comes when we start deploying other products and other processes. So for example, data classification helps drive the data privacy paid plugin. If we're talking about data anonymization, when we're doing cloning and GDPR, right to be forgotten, and other processes, the data that is driven off of data classification. And I can also say, sitting through other product roadmaps here at ServiceNow, there's other teams that are building in functionality to be aware that certain sensitive data is classified. But where I see the real value for everyone here that you can take away with you today is with other projects. So if we start talking about column level encryption and say, okay, where should I start? What should I encrypt? That's a great point. Let's take a look at where our sensitive data is. Maybe it's in HR, maybe it's in customer, maybe it's in CSM, and it's not just in the incident table or security incidents. So by doing a review of your instance and getting things classified, again, the classification itself does not add any extra access control. It's just helps visualize where that sensitive data lives and how much of it there is. And that final point, when we start doing a proactive security review or a security audit, we don't know where to begin. So the data classification tool can help us start in the right place. Nick, any other classification thoughts before we move on?
Yeah, one game changer that's been awesome, it has been that they added the ability to add multiple classifications per column, because when this first came out, I remember it was a little limited because you had to pick like one format, right? Like, do I want low, medium, high, restricted? Do I want to tag regulatory things? And you have to do one or the other. But the ability to add multiple is really cool, because now you can say, okay, let's add like criticality levels to it, but also we could add additional tags of this is PHI, this is PCI, so that when you do have to pull things for an audit, or when you're doing a security review, whatever, you can easily slice it at different levels. You could say, show me all the medium severity things, show me all the PHI things, which is super helpful. And beyond that, if you're thinking, one place I've seen this super helpful, like Jarod was mentioning about what column should I encrypt, is on a greenfield implementation. When you're moving things like HRSD, SecOps, custom apps, maybe with PHI, you're able to classify these things in flight when you're moving things over and building things in your greenfield instance, so that you have a really good foundation to bring to the data privacy team at your organization or whoever else needs to know, and say, hey, here's my subset of things we've classified. Which ones do you want to encrypt? Do we need to classify more things? It's just a super helpful way of organizing it, instead of struggling through like sharing your screen and trying to look through every column while you're on the phone with your internal legal and data privacy folks.
Great real world example. Yeah, so at that bottom bullet point was data classification can help you during a proactive security review. And so security review, the first thing we would want to do is define the scope. There's a lot of different options for when we start talking about security reviews or security audits. We can talk about the instance security itself, the data security. Maybe we're going to do an access review and take a look at who has accounts and what level of access is out there today. We could even be talking about our SDLC process and doing code reviews and making sure that things like evals aren't getting put into global scope business rules on the way up and other public ACLs and stuff like that. So, but for today, we're talking about data protection. So we'll talk about data security in our theoretical proactive security review. And with that, we do not have infinite time. So we'll want to review the most valuable things first. And so on a clean instance, a fresh Xanadu instance, I noticed that there's around 5,500 tables. There's around 100,000 columns. And out of box, there's about 22,000 ACLs. And so if you have an older instance, I'm sure it's well north of that. And so if we've been doing the data classification and we know where our most valuable data starts, for our security review, yeah, let's just jump in and let's double check that our ACLs and before query business rules, data filters, column level encryption, whatever other layers we have are just rock solid on these 24 columns in theory that we've identified as high or PHI, PII, depending on our industry. And so that makes it a lot more manageable. We can jump in and we can say, yes, I did a 100% review of our critical data instead of, giving them, oh, I reviewed 70 columns, right? That means less to an executive versus, yeah, we had two team members review 100% of our critical data. So that's, I really like that. And then after that, we can move on to we can prioritize our other apps. We can go over HR, we can go over CSM, we can review maybe the CMDB, things like that. But we do not want to forget about this proactive security review. And then Britta, can you do one more click? And in addition to just reviewing the current state of things, a thing called security attributes was quietly released in the Tokyo release. And so that can actually allow you to get rid of, I estimate, probably 60 or 70% of scripted ACLs can be replaced with these condition-based security attributes. And so not only will that make it faster and make those ACLs eligible to be cached on that record level or table level, that when we get away from scripted ACLs and move into security attributes, condition-based things, we also reduce the chance of accidents. And we make it easier for someone to review the configuration. And so, yeah, during a security review, I'm always looking for things like, and just the 10 seconds on security attributes. ACLs typically look at the data, right? We're looking at the current record and conditions on that. Security attributes look at the current session. So is this person coming in from this IP address? Did this person log in with multi-factor authentication? Is this person, so a lot of things that had to be scripted before are now eligible to be moved into security attributes. And then we also have some other new things, data filtration. Next year, you'll see a lot of things. I expect security data filters to keep an eye out for that because data filtration is getting an upgrade next year. Take a look at that. And then also, if you saw any of the news last year, we have a new type of ACLs. Instead of the allow if this condition is met, we have a new deny unless condition. So let's take it on into the next slide and jump into those deny ACLs.
I would think this security attribute would be a great enhancement for a lot of people because I've been on a lot of deployments where you get really tangled up in ACLs. So that sounds awesome.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, it's yeah, and it's simpler and faster. So it's a win-win to just get those. I mean, there's not a one-click migration path for it, but I do definitely think it's worth that effort.
Mhm.
So one of the newest tools in your tool bag of core platform security products is a new type of ACLs. So pretty much from the time that ACLs were invented back in probably 2004, 2005, they've all just been adding access. They're additive. If you wanted to remove access from someone, you had to refactor the existing ACLs, maybe split a big ACL into 3 small ones to give only the necessary access. So deny ACLs do exactly what they say. They are the first ACL to be processed, and it is deny unless the condition of this new thing is met. So it can help prevent accidental exposure. Let's see. But I do want to call out that they are not for every situation. For example, if you're thinking about the incident table and we want to just make a deny unless you have the ITIL role, that will effectively lock out those one-offs like the caller. Like if there's a user that is the caller or the opened by field in an incident, they need to be able to see that particular record or also the watch list. So we in that case, we can't do a blanket deny unless. We may be able to do some other types of deny unless for other tables, like if we're looking at security incidents, and maybe we want to say deny unless they are logging in from the corporate network range, right? So it's a deny unless using that security attribute to prevent access. So this is, again, it's a very powerful tool, very configurable tool.
Yeah, and
So
I recommend going to that Platform Academy session linked here. Those are usually really excellent sessions, and they probably dive into it in a much deeper depth than we can get into here.
Yeah, I do want to call that out. The Platform Academy session was recorded almost 2 years ago, and so it goes deep into the allow ACLs and the order of processing, and then also caching and performance. Myself and 2 coworkers hosted that. Yeah, around 2 years ago. So we need to do a new version of that does include some of the newer technologies like the data filtration and deny unless ACLs. But if we want to talk about caching and you want to learn what gets cached and what doesn't get cached and how you can make your ACLs efficient, definitely go check out Platform Academy number 28.
Right, and a copy of this deck will be made available after the session. And so that brings us to another poll here. So before we start talking about the Access Analyzer, we wanted to get a feeling for how comfortable you all are with it, if you've used it at all, that sort of thing. So if you want to go ahead and answer the poll question here with your confidence level. So looks like we're kind of all over the place. We've got some not very confident, some somewhat confident, and some confident folks. So
and that's exactly what I was expecting. Sometimes I bring this up and everyone says, oh, we use that every week for the last year. And then other times I bring it up and nobody in the room has even heard of it. So this is definitely reflective of my experience.
Yeah. So yeah, actually confident won out here with the most responses, and then somewhat, and then not confident are equal. So thank you all for answering that, and we'll let Nick and Jared go back to their presentation.
Yeah, Access Analyzer. So this is a really cool tool to use as kind of like your first look when a access issue gets brought up, or you can say an incident and saying, hey, why can't I access this table? I'm supposed to be able to have access. Lots of use cases. The first awesome use case is let your tier one people use this. So like the people that are triaging your incidents initially before it gets escalated to like your highest technical escalation level on your ServiceNow internal team, let them run this tool for the scenario and do the first check, right? Because they might be able to, they may not know how to look at the hierarchy of ACLs and things like that, but this could give them a really good read of when everything compiles down and that user's trying to look at the profile, what exactly is blocking them. And so this doesn't replace reviewing the whole hierarchy, but you can probably knock out some incidents that come over for access issues just using this tool. For developers, you can test the happy path for all the things you're building. It's a great way to test to do your test cases. And say you're building a custom app and you have to do custom tables with custom ACLs. Great way to say, hey, in this scenario, what can this person do? In this scenario, what can this person do? And then in the inverse of that, make sure you could do your regression testing. If I'm changing an ACL, say at an extended table, I want to see if there's downstream effects for these edge cases for these random users. So it's a great way to kind of do those sequentially instead of impersonating every single user. It's a great way to just test scenarios that maybe you wouldn't have had time to test previously. And also for high, like when you open a high ticket about access issues, it's a great way to communicate. Like if you're saying, hey, this person has access to a thing and they can't see it. It's way easier to send them a screenshot of an access analyzer query than it is to send them 15 ACLs and explain how they all compile down and everything else. So if you give them that screenshot, they'll see, oh, okay, in this scenario, this ACL, when everything compiles down, when this person views it in their session, this ACL is breaking everything. So super awesome for high, and when you're communicating with ServiceNow support. Here's an example of how it looks. So the first one, you could do different things with Access Analyzer if you're not familiar at all. First thing is compare users. So I could say, hey, why can Jarod see this thing, but I can't? We're in the same groups or we're in very similar groups. I want to understand why he could see it. So this is a super easy way to do that without opening records in multiple screens, looking back and forth and looking up every role. I could easily see here, oh, okay, it's because he's in that group or he has that role.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And when we start looking at two sys user records, we have all those directly given roles and then all those inherited roles. And so we might have, you might have 118 things and I might have 117. So like this makes it really easy. Do that show differences only checkbox and just speeds you right to the answer.
This looks like any administrator's dream to me.
Yes. And then evaluate access. So this is the one I was talking about where if you want to test a bunch of scenarios, this is the thing. So if someone reports a ticket and says, hey, I can see incidents for all of these things, but there's one specific incident I'm not seeing a column on, or I'm not seeing a specific field, or I can't delete it, whatever, then you can just run that whole scenario in here, right? You pick the table, okay, the incident table, this is the specific ticket, this is the specific person, and then you can even go as granular as a field. This is the field that's breaking, and then evaluate. And then the next step, I think it's on the next slide, will give you the output of that. It's okay, this is what's happening for that specific ticket, for that specific person, for that specific field. So this is a great way again to see, because the ACLs, we know like they're kind of a hierarchy, so it's a great way to see them all compile down in one view without jumping between a bunch of ACLs, which inevitably sometimes you do have to dig into the ACLs, but this could save you a lot of time if it's a simple, oh, okay, maybe we didn't accommodate for this specific scenario. And you could jump to the ACL actually right from the hyperlinks, which is super helpful.
Yeah. So here, this is all the ACLs, but maybe we're trying to debug or figure out the read access. Why can this user read it? So if we click in on the read, we can actually drill down, I think, 4 levels. And let's go next slide into the specific read access. And we can see here, there's a before query business rule. And then looks like 5 different read ACLs. And yeah, it looks like they were all blocked except for that bottom number 6.
If you troubleshoot, if you're on this call and you troubleshoot a lot of tickets that come in, I bet you you've ran into a scenario where a query rule is blocking you. So this is super cool that it comes up here, because sometimes that's something you don't think about. It's like, oh, I'm looking through all the ACLs. They should see this, but it's nice to see that there to remind you, oh, there's a query rule. I should check that out.
Yep. And we go one more level deeper, and it brings us to the exact ACL that provided the read access. And in this case, that's correct. The user that we had selected earlier was in the opened by field on that particular incident. And so that is why they got read access to it.
All right. Data management. So, data lifecycle is huge, right? It's something that's often neglected. Things kind of sit on the table for a while, and a lot of people, it comes up when they're like, we're running out of storage, but you should also think of it with the security lens of, we have a bunch of data sitting on the instance, right? Like, you could have incidents that have maybe PHI or PII, which it shouldn't be, but it might be in the short description or work notes inadvertently. So you want to clear things. You want to find out what your minimum standards are for retention, and then set up your data lifecycle rules based on that. And what that means exactly is, to the first line item, you probably don't need 12 years of incidents table available all the time on the incident table. That has reporting impacts, that's performance impacts, and security impacts, because you have a bunch of data that may have things that you don't know about sitting on there. So set up archive rules to move things out of that table, which will help your performance, and also will move things out of the initial incident table, which is the first place likely people will go to dump data if someone did get access. And then beyond that, destroy rules. Once you figure out what your minimum retention period is, both legally and just policy wise, set up rules to get rid of the data. If you don't need it, don't save it. And that's not even just for storage. Again, that's for security perspective of, you have stuff sitting in there you may not know about. So just purge it if you're not going to use it or if you don't need it. One final big point out is, if you have a legacy instance, this is now on by default on net new instances, but if you have an older instance, check the property that's in the slide on the bottom, because that is going to make the system enforce the ACLs on the archive table that you're extending from. So for example, if you have an old instance, this property may be off, and if you copy things to the archive table, it's not going to respect maybe custom ACLs or other things you have on the parent incident table. So if you're going from incident to archive incident, you probably don't have any special ACLs defined on that. So consider checking that out. Most people should have that enabled, and all that it's going to do is respect the ACLs from the source table that you're archiving to.
Yeah, and another consideration around data management is also discovery. So, if your company gets sued, you don't want to have data around that you don't know what it is.
Yes.
Instances where people have done discovery and it's like, oops, now we got to provide this data to the legal team, and we really didn't want to. So there's a lot of good reasons to make sure you manage your data.
Totally. Yes.
All right, well, that concludes our session for today. And just to recap, if you want to take a quick screenshot to recap what we covered today, obviously we started out with understanding the general responsibility model, making sure that you're prepared for the MFA updates coming in Yokohama. And then, make sure that you have a review before implementing that column level encryption, because you don't want to encrypt something that unnecessarily or that messes you up later. And familiarize yourself with the standard and enterprise features. And again, the enterprise features is part of a paid version. Prepare for your data classification with a plan before implementing. Anytime you're classifying data or categorizing data, you definitely need to approach that with a thoughtfulness in mind, instead of kind of going pell-mell helter-skelter on that. And then the new deny ACL, deny unless ACL prevents accidental data exposure, and can simplify your logic. So I think this is a pretty exciting new development in the platform. And make sure you start or continue to have those proactive reviews regularly, and you can keep building on them as you go along and iterating on them and making them better and more useful as you go. And don't forget about the Access Analyzer. This is going to really help you with troubleshooting. If you're both a developer or an admin, you both need to understand this tool and how it can really help you out. I can see a lot of benefits from this tool, because I can remember sitting and many a times watching a developer go through ACL line by line and by line and trying to find an issue. And this looks like this will be an awesome addition. And then also, as we just finished up on the data management, you can reduce the scope of how much data is in the platform and also limit your liability and improve your performance. Anything else you gentlemen want to add before we move on to the Q&A?
Nope, great recap.
Okay,
Yeah.
awesome.
Thanks. I do want to, I know there's a survey that does come out. I do always appreciate good marks on the reviews, but also the ideas for future sessions. But we do look at those. Those are very valuable when looking at the roadmap. So I do want to do a second advertisement for throwing some thoughts in there.
And that survey will come to you as soon as we close the webinar. So just if you could just take a couple minutes to let us know how we did, and also lean in on what additional topics you'd like to see us present on.
Viraj, did we answer your question? I don't know if you can unmute or not, but I hope I answered your question. If you have more questions about that, feel free to drop in the chat, or we can unmute you probably, I think.
Yeah. And also we have another question in the queue from Rachana. I'm sorry, I butchered your name. Can we use the access analyzer for access reviews as well, or automate any assessments?
I would say for if we're talking about like identity governance type access reviews, I would say it's not at that level where you can automate an access review.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much automation is built into that. I know it's largely built for interactive usage by developer and administrator personas. So I'm not sure how much could be automated even within the scope of what it does do.
All right, folks, we still have 11 more minutes here. So if you have any burning questions, you have two amazing experts here and not a lot of competition in the Q&A to get a question answered. So don't be shy. If you have any questions, type them in the Q&A or put up your hand, and we would be happy to take those.
Yeah, while we wait for that, I'll just have one question that comes up for me regularly is within the column level encryption scope. What can I do with column level encryption and my RITMs, my request items, service catalog things? So my typical answer is kind of working my way backward from the destination of where that data is going to live. The short answer is the cleanest, easiest way to handle that is to have a record producer in your catalog and have that open up data directly into the source table of where it's well protected. We don't want to add any moving parts along the way. We don't want to store that in any intermediary tables that's driving the RITM or the catalog task table. So my personal best practice is if we can get that data, and also attachments are supported within column level encryption. So we can put a record producer, get the data we need, get the attachments we need, put that in the target table, and then have a flow or something similar to kick off any approvals, kick off any states for fulfillment along the way for those sensitive tasks. So yeah, it is compatible with end user types of things like record producers.
That's a really good point.
That's a really common question. So thanks for calling that out.
All right, Viraj has another question on MFA. For local admin account created when we are placing clone requests or pulling updates, how it work if MFA is forced as it takes only local login password?
Yeah, good question. I think this one's going to come up more and more out in the community. I'm not sure if we can go all the way back. Can you easily jump back to whatever
The MFA slide, yep.
slide that was? That would be slide 12. Because Because yeah, it's for local logons. It's for interactive logon is when this thing is newly enforcing it. So that local admin account, yes, it's a local account, but when you're pulling update sets or doing clone requests, it's talking to a SOAP API across the endpoint. And so the SOAP APIs are not currently in scope for MFA. So it will allow authentication for that API level access. If you try to use that admin account to interactively log on to that instance, then it will prompt you to register or enforce the MFA.
Sorry, I was trying to copy the link to put it in the chat. So, but this presentation and the recording will be available after the session. So if you need any of these links that are mentioned here, you'll be able to grab those out of that. It usually takes me about a day or so to get that uploaded after I edit the recording. Any other questions, folks? Again, don't be shy. We've got some really, Nick and Jarod know their stuff here. So if you're struggling with anything or have any questions, now's the time. We're all trying to regroup after the holiday break. So if you think of something later, again, where I post this on the community, you'll be able to comment or ask questions. Okay, Raj, you're a star today. You got lots of good questions. Will the Access Analyzer guide to I can't really, I'm not sure I understand the question.
Very good. Yeah, Nick, I was just going to plug LinkedIn. That's probably where Nick and I are most active out there. So please follow, connect, and throw some ideas for future sessions that you want to listen to, or possibly if you want to collaborate on, if you have some ideas and want to co-host to help you get it off the ground, reach out on LinkedIn.
And Daniel says, bring you two back again for another session.
He's great. We appreciate this.
That's
The
a
Access
question there.
Analyzer guide to business rule as it takes us to ACL as showcased.
Oh, so are you asking if when you saw that preview, if there's a query business rule in place, can you jump to it? Is that the question?
Yeah, I think that's what the question is. Oh, we
Pretty-
got a
Yes, I'm pretty sure it does. Do you know off the top of your head, Jarod? I feel like it does. If it shows up, I'm assuming it would hyperlink there. But do you know, Jarod?
I'm 80% sure that it would, if that was blocking access or if that was providing access, that would
I want to test it, but I'm trying to think of a fast way to test it.
Yeah, I mean it was
Let me see.
hyperlinked in our slide 24 where we clicked into that ACL at the bottom of the list. It was hyperlinked the same way that those other ones were. So
I'm gonna see if I can get one real quick.
I'm gonna up my 80% to 83% confidence after reviewing that screenshot.
Well, you ask a geek a question on a live session, he's going to have to find the answer.
Yes,
right?
exactly. I got a nerd swipe. Try to find one.
In this case, there are no data filters present for this incident example, but I do know that data filtration is supported in both if we're just doing the traditional debug security in the UI, or if we're doing script debugger or script tracer. Everything is present there. The data filtration, the deny rules, the before query rules are visible there.
While Nick is working on seeing if we can find a test case on that, I'm just going to pop up the resources and talk about those for a couple of minutes. So on ServiceNow University, which is the rebranding that's in process for Now Learning, in case you weren't aware of that, there's a few courses out there that you can take: Introduction to the Access Analyzer, Encryption and Data Keys, the 4X on CLE and Enterprise, Introduction to Access Controls and ACL Basics, and then another link to the blog, or I'm sorry, to the Academy session there that you can access. So those are some additional resources that you can lean into after the call if you want to learn more and have an opportunity to do so. And no pressure, Nick, but how's it going over there?
I'm trying to find one off the top of my head, so I was actually just typing in the chat. Viraj, if you want to message me, not to plug my LinkedIn again, but if you want to add me and message me on LinkedIn, I'll find this answer for you because I need to know now from for my own brain.
Well,
So
then you can
I
erase
could
this
follow up with
off.
you. I don't want to hang everyone up on here.
That's all right. We still do have 2 minutes, so I'll finish the wrap up, and if you find it before then, we'll be good.
Sounds good.
Want to thank you all for coming today. Please watch my LinkedIn, shameless promotion of that as well. And for other upcoming Ask the Experts events or on the community where you can find them. And would love to see you at some additional sessions next week at the same time, same bat channel. We'll be talking about how to use the community to change your career midstream. And we have a couple of experts that are going to talk on that. And then the last Tuesday of the month, we'll have Willem Zeller, one of our MVPs, talking about how to start using our AI tools and making sure that you're compliant when doing so. So look for those announcements on those items coming soon. And then we'd really like to see you at an upcoming webinar. And also, as we've mentioned multiple times, to the point where you're probably tired of hearing of it, there will be a post-event survey that comes out immediately after this. So you can tell us how we did. And also, please make recommendations for additional topics, not only around security, but maybe other topics that you might be interested in having us present on the Ask the Expert series. So that's my last ending spiel. Nick, how are you doing?
I found it. Yes, it does open the business role.
All right.
All right.
Awesome sauce.
Just in
Right
time.
under the wire. All right. Thanks again, everybody, for attending.
problem.
Hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, you too. Talk to you
Yeah.
later. Thanks, everyone.